2. And now we are recording, and everybody can say, got it. All right, well, thank you. This is Animal Body Language and Behavior. Then this started as basically as training for staff at the Humane Society. There's a lot of volunteers, as many of you know, a lot of training for volunteers, as many of you know, because you take it. And some of the staff don't get that or haven't been getting that level of training. And we've changed those things here over the last 6 months. And I wanted to put this out to staff to begin with, and now I'm starting to roll it out to volunteers and also outside the rescue groups. So what we're going to be looking at today, there we go. If Glenn can figure out, there we go. So there's 2 pieces to the presentation tonight. We're going to begin talking about looking at the entire body, seeing the entire animal, because everything is in context of what's going on at that moment. And we want to look at the entire, really the entire body of the dog is going to tell us, give us a better idea of what's happening. So we'll be looking at posture and movement. And also we'll be talking a lot about giving the pets choice of doing or not doing what it is that we want them to do. The second piece of the presentation will be on the details, and that's where we'll look at the difference between ears being up and forward and back and pressed against the head. So that's what we're going to be looking at over the next little bit. One of the ways that I like to think about all training along this line is keeping or giving us enough knowledge that's going to reduce the chances we get bit. And since it is, at least at the recording of this, we are a few weeks away from holiday season, we see a picture of Santa. And based on this picture and nothing but this picture, if we look at all of the bullet points on the right and the dog, we'll see almost every one of those, except for teeth showing, and that's mutually exclusive to tight lips. But let's just go down that list on the right. Stiff body. Well, Doberman, this is a Doberman pinscher. Dobermans have a good muscular body to begin with anyway. But that body does not look relaxed. That looks pretty, that looks pretty stiff there at that moment. Second bullet, hard stare. Whether it's a blue eye or a significant whale eye, which I'll talk about more later, we've got a really hard stare right there from that dog. Squinty eyes obviously is mutually exclusive of hard stare. He's not there's no lip curl, there's no teeth showing, but the lips are tight. You can see, I mean, those lips are closed at that moment. Now, it's hard to tell on that picture. Well, y'all are all younger than I am, so you may be able to see it, but the tip of that dog's tongue is sticking out just a little bit. And those 2 things together, tight lips and tongue flicks, are 2 of the things that set off alarms in my brain, not red flags, alarms, because that's 2 of the things that can happen right before a launch. Not saying that it is going to happen, but that usually happens right before a dog launches on something. So tight lips and tongue flicks are like I said, that's an alarm. That's not a red flag. Leaning away. We're going to talk about distance a lot tonight. And again, y'all have heard me talk about that a lot. It looks like to me that the dog may be leaning away a little bit. I can't really tell, but just looking at Santa's hand position on the back side, it kind of looks like that left hand that you can see, I guess the white glove, is probably holding onto the bandana or a harness or leash or something. So the dog may be moving away a little bit. The ears, even though they're docked, you can see that they're back. I mean, if those ears were full ears, they would still be back. That's another sign of fear or stress. We can't see the tail in this case, but at this point, it doesn't matter if we think about everything we're seeing from that dog. So the other thing, though, I mean, those are the signs of fear from the dog. But if we think about it from the person aspect, it looks like Santa has a little bit of a restraint. Oh, sorry if I just slurped my water there, y'all. It looks like Santa has a little bit of restraint on the dog, which means that Santa's taken away his flight response. So Dobie couldn't go running away if he wanted to because Santa's got a restraint on him. The other thing that Santa's doing right there is hovering over the dog and has his face really close to that dog's teeth. And if that dog decides to jump up to bite Santa, Santa's not going to react that quick. So I like to start out with this slide because it really does, in that one picture, shows almost everything you could see from a situation that could go either way. And that's the thing about it from behavior that honestly wakes me up at 2:30 in the morning sometimes, is that, that could go either way. The dog may do okay with it, or the dog may not. Or it may be the dog does okay with it 9 out of 10 times. And, mercy on the number 10 that's within that mix. So the idea in this, two things that I take away from this. Number one, Santa's doing exactly what someone should not do to a dog they don't know. And that dog is showing a tremendous amount of fear and stress. And dogs usually in that case want to have a little bit of distance. Sometimes it's a foot, sometimes it's a mile, but there's a little bit of distance, and that's being taken away from the dog right there. So there is this presentation in a nutshell, and we're going to kind of break that down a little bit more and more. So we looked at that dog who is tense and, oh no, Santa's not going to be able to have any pictures. Oh, and that was the other thing with that. I mean, it kind of, to me, looked like one of those of bring your dog to have pictures with Santa. So, but anyway, so that was a tense one. But now let's talk about, what do we want to see? What is the ideal thing if we're out with a dog? Well, if we look at the picture on the right, that is the dog that's the black and white. That is a play bow. That is exactly what we want to see. That is whether it is to another dog or to you, that play bow is the behavior, that signal that says whatever I'm doing or about to do, it's all play, it's not a threat. Now, the play bow can also be used in other ways that we'll talk about a little bit on through the presentation, but the play bow, the chest down on the ground, the butt up, and if you do yoga, you know exactly what that looks like. That's the down dog. That's exactly what the down dog is. I've never looked at that perfect the way that dog is. So on the right, now on the left, the two dogs that we're going to see, this is a video clip about 15 seconds long, and there are 5 different dogs that make an appearance in this video. And we'll talk about, well, we'll go back. All right. So we're going to watch that again, and I'm going to, couple of things that were in this. Boom. So that's not what I wanted to do. Oh, and I just realized I have this microphone on, and that was really loud. Sorry about that. So roll over, I call that attention getting. The little dog right there runs smack dab into the big dog. Now, this big dog right here throws a play bow. Did you see that? So there's 2 different functions of a play bow. The one on the right is really engaging of, come on, let's play, let's play. I forgot to mention the dog that's on the white and brown dog on the right is about 11 years old, or maybe not quite that old, but definitely had some arthritis and things going on. So this was like one of a series of pictures. And he did end up throwing the best play bow that he could. It just took him a little while to get into it. So that's not a concerning behavior from him overall, because I know what else was going on at that moment. So the dog, so the dog on the right, that play bow is engaging, wants to, come on, let's play. I'm not going to hurt you, buddy. The other way that a play bow can be used is that I'm not going to hurt you, buddy, or I'm really scared of you and I'm going to throw a play bow and hope you'll chuckle and walk away. So it can also be used to diffuse a tense situation. Neither of these videos really show that. I'm still searching for that video. I know I have it somewhere in the gigs and gigs, but I haven't found it yet. But let's watch this one more time. Come on. All right, what did I do? Okay. I love that. And this guy running right smack dab into the side of him. And here's that play bow that now this guy is trying his best to get the little dogs to play with them, and he's trying to show in every way he can, I just want to play. And they're like, go pick on somebody your own size. So, of course, I don't know if they're saying that, but so body posture. So we saw a little bit right there as the dogs were with each other. Obviously, 99% of the time when we're out with dogs, it's going to be solo. So tense and crouching and cowering all have different, or can have different meanings. And how the dog wants to respond and what the dog needs to respond to that fear is different. So what you'll see on the left, the dog that's dragging the leash, this is a dog that's fearful. This is a scared dog. If we started the tail, if we started the back and move forward, you can see that tail is down. Obviously, he's trotting around, maybe pacing. The body doesn't really look relaxed. It doesn't look like that dog's trying to get us to throw a ball to it or anything. The tongue is out, the ears are down. All of those are signs of fear. One of the big signs of fear is the distance that dog is away. Fear means, or fear is distance. So if the dog is trying to stay away from you, you can interpret that as fear. Generally, if the dog seems to be fearful but wants to get up in your lap like the dog on the right, that's submissive. Now, I think there's still a fear component in it, but we're not also worried right now about definitions and things. The bottom line is we've got a dog that is completely unsure about what's going on. And our job as people who are at the Humane Society is to try our best to get that dog to realize that they're in a great place. Come on, buddy, people are good. And obviously, a lot of we do that through cheese and hot dogs. And I'm sure there were a lot of, in fact, it's hard to say what that may be on the floor right there next to the dog on the right, but no doubt there were cheese and hot dogs involved in getting these guys to come. And the dog on the left, honestly, I can't remember anything about. The dog on the right was a stray who was refound or reclaimed by its owner. That was a story I absolutely remember, but boy, that dog was so concerned and all he wanted to do was getting somebody's lap. I happened to be the one here, but that dog would have been happy to get in anybody's lap. So we want to give them what they're asking for and what they want to do at that moment. So talking more about body movement, forward and backward or no body movement. So distance is so key, whether you're out in the play yards or you're going to leash a dog up. So in this slide, we have two different videos. This video is, some of you may have seen this. This is a dog named Paisley that's in the considered approach video. But you can see right there, Paisley stepped back a couple of steps as I approached. So of course, it's like, guess what, Paisley? I have hot dogs. Do you like hot dogs? And Paisley said, oh, those are good. I'm going to stay right here and see if you throw more. I knew right there, Paisley was going to be mine. It was just a matter of time. There was that, and the big thing right here with Paisley is that I'm throwing the hot dogs, so she has to move a step or two closer to me. So I want to get her moving forward. And she's willing to do it because holy smokes, man, those are good. And that's really, really scary. But if you're going to give me that, then yeah, I'll come on forward a little bit. So we as, well, me as behavior, you as volunteers have the luxury of time to spend this much time with our dogs and never feel guilty about doing something like this. Now, some of the other staff at the Humane Society, I mean, right now, I mean, literally when I left this afternoon, we had 703 animals. And I want to say 500 of those are on site. So right now, staff is doing everything they can to work as fast as possible. So they don't always have the, great question, Megan, I'll come right back to it. Staff doesn't always have the time to, or have the luxury to give this much time. So Megan just asked a great question, and I went ahead and paused the video. Why do you throw the hot dogs out to her instead of holding them out to her in your hand and slowly bringing your hand closer? Does that make her feel more comfortable? And does that immediately coming close to your hand? So this is a perfect question to talk about choice and what she is doing here. So I want her to come forward. And one of the things that I'm watching is what's causing her to still back up a little bit, because I want to do everything I do. I want to eliminate any hesitation she has. So right now, she probably would take them out of my hand, but I've really made the decision right now that I want mainly to get her more interested in, like, I'm just going to keep eating these hot dogs, because when I go to leash her for the first time, I want to be successful that first time. So I hope that makes sense, a little bit of why I'm doing it. And I'll talk about that more. And I'll talk about this more as this proceeds, because you're actually going to see how this evolves. But you know what? There's another video we're going to see later of her tomorrow. And I think I may do it that way. But anyway, so she's moved forward. And that's the main thing I'm looking for here, is that she continues to move forward. But I'm about to, I'm going to open the gate and step in. So all of a sudden, big scary thing that I have not done before is about to happen. And when, I think that's when, boom, now I've stepped in, or now I've moved in. So she backed up a little bit and I wanted her to step forward. There wasn't much of a step right there, but a little bit. And I think actually, now I didn't even think about it, but I think she may have taken that hot dog out of my hand right there. So I'm stepping in. I knew at this point that, or I felt at this point that she was going to continue to show this same level of fear. And but I felt I could be successful at that moment to get the leash on her, and I was. So part of it was, I'm going to keep doing this because the first time I go to put the leash on you, I want to get the leash on you. I don't want to stumble and mess up, because I have a tendency to do that if I'm not paying attention. And so there was a lot of that going on right there. Now, this was also at a time, and this was recorded in our old shelter. We had, and obviously if I have videos, I usually remember the story behind the dogs. Normally we would not have put Paisley on the adoption floor, and that's what this area was, but it was actually the best thing for her at that point in time. And but she had just come into the shelter, so it was important, with it being the first time, that I wanted everything to be as positive for her as it could be, and turned out good. And again, we're going to see her in a later video as she progressed, and we'll talk about it. So this is in our old intake patio. And what we're going to see here, this is a kennel presentation assessment. I usually do these in a flash walking by. Well, this dog is staying at the back, but you see the head still looking towards me. That dog does not turn its head or anything, even watched me as I stood back up. The next dog, the black dog, is right there and forward, or right at the front of the kennel, but there's no tail, there's nothing, there's no movement from that dog. I mean, there's nothing I can really read from that dog. Now, this guy has been up front, tail wagging, attention getting, will somebody leash me up and take me out? And then the next dog, kind of the white shepherd on the left that I don't really go all the way up to, is just chilling out at the front. So right now, if we do a quick pause, and right there, doggone. And I did that again of going, right in y'all's. What I wanted to show, that's not it, is that this dog, that guy right there on the far right, is now at the front of the cage. So a lot of times, if they're staying in the back and we toss a hot dog to them and then walk away, that could, I mean, sometimes they're like, hey, wait a minute, why did you walk away? And they'll come up to the front. Now, they may very well come to the front and go to the back when you walk back to it. But that's when I would throw hot dogs. So we're going to look at this dog who they decided to name Glenn. I don't know why. But this is very subtle, but there was a little sniff. And then it was like the nose turned away a little bit, the shoulders turned away, subtle, but it was enough right there that it was like, all right, we'll check back on you later. There was just no behaviors. There was no signal, no body postures, nothing from that dog that said, oh boy, I'm so excited you're here to take me out for a walk. Now, this girl on the right, who had a miraculous turnaround, this is Abby, I mean, you can see that I'm standing there talking to her. There's hot dogs that are right there by her paw that's on the concrete. She's just, looking up at me without moving her head. We're going to talk about that here in a few slides. But, there's nothing about her right there that says, I want to go for a walk. I mean, turning away, moving away, all of those kind of basically distance increasing behaviors. They're increasing distance. Well, they're trying to increase distance from you in this case. And those are signs of really a fearful dog. Like, I don't know what's going on. I'm not ready to deal with that right now. That's how we look at it. It's like, okay, here's a hot dog. We'll come back later. All right. So we'll go ahead now. So this is Paisley. This is the dog that we were watching earlier. This is on the walk shortly after I took her out or got her leashed up from there. You'll see that it's kind of a fast walk. The tail stays down. We're going to talk about tails in the second portion. The tail's down and there's a shake off. We're going to come back to that. So there's a couple of things about this video that if somebody said, okay, give me your observations as you watch this video. The first thing I noticed is absolutely no eye contact back to the handler. Paisley never looked at me the entire time. I mean, not even a glance, never even turned to the back. Now, because of the body postures, I would say that's a lot of avoidance. Um, and let's watch that again. She stays kind of tense, you know, she's bouncing, almost fidgety, walking fast, never looking at me. But what I wanted to talk about, she's sniffing here. Okay, so that dog. Um, um, so there, well, we couldn't hear the video right there. I thought maybe you'd be able to hear in the video, but she did what's called a shake off right there. Right before that, she had stopped and looked over, actually towards Howard, right there is where that is. And there was a noise out on the street. And the shake off is something a dog does after they've just had a, let's say, a stressful experience. So, I mean, if you think of something that you have to do to the day, through the day that you don't like, or maybe, well, really, I'm going to say something that gives you the creeps, that it's like, oh boy, I'm glad that's done with. That's kind of the way I think of the shake off from a dog in a case like this. So there's no water they're shaking off or anything. And it's not like after you gave them a lot of rubs or anything like that. That's a little bit different. You know, in this case, it really is one of, whoa, that stressful thing is behind me. So a shake off is really good. That's a good thing to see from a dog. So Paisley actually did fine. So I've talked about giving the pet a choice. It really is a key thing to help dogs deal with new situations. And I think that's what really the people who are really smart in dog research have learned, that if they're given a choice when they're learning and they're really scared about it, if they're given the choice and have the positive experiences, then they're going to improve. I mean, the success rates are really high. So I try as much as I can to give the pet a choice. If they want to move away from me, I need some space. All right, go ahead and move from me. Now, back to what Magana asked earlier, I would absolutely at that point toss a hot dog to them, like, yeah, you can move away from you, but if you move closer to me, I'm going to give you hot dogs. So it's kind of, and then that's positive reinforcement. Move close to me, I'm going to reinforce that. So, and also of giving the pet a choice, so often I see people that will hold a dog who's trying to move away a little bit and said, no, just come on up and pet them. And then they come right over with a hand on top of the dog's head. So the dog basically in a situation like that had no choice. So what we want to do is encourage the dog to come to us. And if they move towards us, that's an indicator that they're curious about being touched, petted. At least they want to come closer to us. They may not quite be ready to move outside of the whatever zone we want to call that there and next into the you can touch me zone, but we can get them there. So this is a dog that is on our old intake patio. It was outside, it was loud, we were over capacity, and this was actually construction was going on. Every possible stressor could be for this dog who was only about 8 months old to begin with. So everything was new for Sunday. So I wanted to give her plenty of time to make her own decisions. So we're going to watch the wonderful progress this gorgeous little thing gave, and she was so soft. Now, I don't have video audio in these because honestly, other than loud barking dogs, and you can hear all the other stressors, it doesn't add anything to it. But that's part of what she's looking around. I mean, it is so incredibly loud in there. So what I'm trying to do right there, besides not falling over, squatting down, is I'm going to move closer to her here. So I am letting her sniff my hands or sniff the fingers. I'm sure I've got some treats in there. But I'm going to, in this, as this progresses, kind of going to stand in position with her as if she came walking out, she would be right by my side. But I'm also going to squat down, because if you have a dog that's hesitant to take that first step, that sometimes can be the thing that can get the dog to make the first step. And you're going to see Sunday start to do that and then do that. So turning back, looking back, I look at that as, and look at that tail. You see how that tail is tucked? Remember that for a few slides, or when we're in the next piece, because we're going to talk about tails. You can trust that as a sign of fear. And that, even though that she is just enjoying that sniffing, look at that tail and that body, the way she's standing there looking curious, that tail never came out. So gave her the choice here. You can tell that she's loving that sniffing. So even though this is scary, oh, there's a very subtle little, I want to go back to the very start of that, because honestly, I have not noticed that before. At the very start of the video, when she sits down, her tail is wagging. I have never noticed that until tonight, but there's a little movement with that tail. But she loved the yards. So even with all the fear of coming out, it's one of those of, yeah, I hate doing that, but boy, the reward is so good. So that's what we want to do. That's how we change the dogs. But when you see her sit here, you see her tail wag a little bit just as she's sitting. I have not noticed that. That's one of the reasons why I watch dog videos so often, even ones that I've watched before, because there can be such a subtle little thing that's going on in there. But the idea with this, again, my leash is loose. There's no tension at all, because I wanted everything, if she came out, I wanted it to be 100% on her terms. But I was going to also make it as much worth her while. So they're the squatting down a little bit. And she almost took that step, but then it was like, and now she did. So, you know, there's been so many times in my life, it's like, I'm not so sure. Okay, now I'll do it. You know, maybe that's a little bit about what she had going on right there. But she was a sweetheart. All right. So this, all right. So a couple of slides, or a couple of the next slides, while they are applicable for everybody, they really do go specific to using a slip lead, which we use at the Humane Society. So one of the things to think about when you go to leash up a dog, the loop that you've got on the slip lead should be at least twice the size of the dog's head. And one of the advantages of that is that you, with a loop that big, you can move the loop over the dog's head without ever having to touch the dog. And if that's a fearful or a fear or scared dog, that's going to be really, really big for that dog. And it also reduces your chances of getting bitten, because obviously right there on the face is the mouth, and that's where the teeth are. So what you're going to see in this next video is, or this video is me using a very big loop with a dog named Sadie to get her to come out. Sadie had basically Sadie was one of those very first ones that we had coming in that I was dealing with, realizing that I was dealing with a scared, fearful dog here. And for some reason, the resolution on that video I know is coming out weird, but it doesn't change from it. So she's standing at the front of the gate, standing right there, looking around. Not a heck of a lot of movement. You know, it's not like, oh, but so boom, I'm going to pause it, because as I reached up with the leash, so on the right side, my upper hand is opening the gate latch, and in my lower hand is a slip lead. And when I went to do that, she went to move forward. So obviously that is a major sign, because she moved forward. Now, as I moved the slip lead in there, though, she moved back a little bit. She, at least with her head, she didn't move her paws back, I don't believe, but there was a little bit of, I'm not really sure what you're about to do there, man. Oh, doggone. So I'm about to put my hands on the gate latch, and there we go. Well, the first thing, no interest in treat. She moved forward, and the head's kind of moving around, but she's not stepping back. There's a little head avoidance, but she's not stepping back, which is why I continued right there. And right on out we went. So in that case, I was able to put the loop over her head, and I never had to touch her. So the second bullet on this slide says dealing with leash pancakes. On the previous slide with Sunday, when I squatted down, that's one of the easiest ways to deal with leash pancakes. Is kind of really basically squat down right by them, with you're in line with them to take that first step, and kind of trying to encourage them to take that first step. Another thing you can do with that is a treat trail. And that's basically, I mean, if you think about the old fairy tale about the breadcrumbs, that's exactly what we're doing. We just don't need to use that to find our way back. But basically what we're doing is laying out treats that, much like with Paisley, just getting to move forward and laying treats out on a trail that's going to keep the dog moving forward to where you want them to go. Another thing you may have seen around the shelter that I want to be more consistent about doing it with our dogs or drive-by treats. And that's for our fearful dogs, or the ones that are a little bit hesitant about people or coming up to the front, is having a bucket with treats there. So when people walk by, they can just toss a treat into that dog. But that's what drive-by treats are about. But the idea about drive-by treats, again, is for the dog to realize that people bring good things. Hey, there's a person. I should walk forward and see if they have anything for me. That's what we're going for with giving this. Well, that's what we're going for in giving them a choice. We want the dog to realize that, come forward, come to me, I'll give you the choice to do it. And if you do it, I'm going to pay you well for it. Now, I'm talking about dogs here, but it works with any animal, including human beings. So here is another video of Sadie, just to give you an idea. This is probably a day or two later, a volunteer coming up, and she is big loop, put it right over. Sadie's tail is wagging. Perfect, easy to leash up. So for those of you who may have never, or for those of you who have started volunteering at the new shelter and never were at the old shelter, this is our old intake, I'm sorry, not intake, temporary holding area, where we've got right here, or where this dog is. You can see cages are everywhere. This was right before repainting. all of us are just laugh when we see this about how horrible the shelter looked. But I wanted to point out one of the things here that I know a lot of y'all have seen in the other training videos, but as Margaret, the volunteer, is leashing this dog up, her right foot right there is going up to position itself against the gate. So if Sadie jumped up and pushed against the gate, Margaret's got her foot right there on the gate, and Sadie's not going to be able to get out. So that's a really, really good safety tip when you're working with a dog, because if she went to push, Margaret could just lean her body right up against the gate and keep the dog in. All right, so body postures, movements, if we pay attention and really listen and look at what the dog is doing, then we can avoid getting bit. In a lot of cases, it's one of those 9 out of 10 times everything would be okay. It's that 10th time that we never know if or when that's going to happen. So a leash pancake, great question, Bethany, because somebody asked me that the other day and I realized that I hadn't defined it really. A leash pancake is when you've got a dog and you're walking along and the dog decides, nope, I'm just going to stop. I'm going to spread out on the floor, ground, wherever it may be. I'm going to put all my paws out and we're just going to stay here for a little while. So it's just the dog flattening out on a walk. Nothing more than that. That's all it is. But it's generally called a leash pancake because it's kind of like, well, they flattened out. So, all right. So that kind of wraps up the first portion, being the body movement and posture. So we're going to look now for the next little bit of time at the details. We're going to look at the ears and the eyes and the tail and the mouth. And we're going to also talk about some conflicting signs. So we did see conflicting signs in the videos from Paisley, the dog that I was leashing up, throwing the hot dogs to. Because Paisley, like, I want to go out, but I'm not sure. I want to do it, I'm not sure. That's a little bit of a conflict. Another conflict is a dog that throws a play bow and then barks at you. So we'll be talking about and looking at some of those, but we're going to start out talking about ears. 3 things to think about. Relaxed is good, obviously. If they're pinned back, that usually means fear. Not always, but usually. But I think the way to think about that, ears being back doesn't in and of itself mean fear, but pinned back means fear. So thinking of a little bit closer to the head, possibly on the pinned aspect. If the ears are up, that's generally a dog that's aroused, could be just really excited about what they're doing at the moment, or it could be a dog that's on alert, maybe smells something on the other side of the fence or sees something or hears something, and those ears go up and forward, or maybe not necessarily go up, but go forward, because obviously if it's a hound dog, their ears aren't going to go up, but they'll still go forward if they're on alert. So we're going to look at this video to begin with at ears. So let's start with the dog that's on the ground. The only dog that has 4 on the floor is that one right there. Let's watch his ears throughout this video. Don't worry about anything else that's going on. Just try to focus on that dog's ears. So I think, I mean, as I see that, they come forward, They're back quite a bit, but not really pinned back. So I look at that and think it's as much of first time. This is really fun. I just don't really know what's going to happen next, but oh my gosh, this is so much fun. They did come forward a couple of times, but I also thought generally those were relaxed. Even though they were back, they just seemed to be relaxed. So let's watch this guy that's up, just hop down right there, closest to us. That's kind of doing the bouncing around, the tail up. Now you can see those. Oh, now we've got a sniff. Those ears are up and forward. Now they came back a little bit, or kind of to the side. Now, obviously, as we look at this video, so let's go ahead and watch the dog that just jumped down. Now, hers are a little more back than the other. I say her, that's a boy. Seem to be a little more back, but then she's jumping back up. It could just be her ears a little bit. They don't really seem to be too concerning. This was the first time the three of these dogs had been together. Yes, Julie. I may have had them with other dogs at this point, but I don't think they had been together. And my guess is they probably had not been together. That would be pretty unusual based on when this was taken. But if we just look at this, I mean, this really is, and that's a great question, because I mean, this very much looks like three dogs that either just met or haven't seen each other in a long time. I mean, they are all excited. They're aroused. Everything in this video to me, I don't see any red flags. There's certainly no red alarms going on in this video. It's just a bunch of dogs that are really, really excited. Now, the only thing that I would say in this that I would keep an eye on is both of them, or those two, seem to be really, really interested in the pitty and the fawn right there. And who knows why? You know, it could be, actually, this is why this is a great question. It could be that the other two were out together and she was the third one that came out. And I keep saying she, it's not a girl, but the pitty. But yeah, and part of what's great about that question is everything in behavior is really about context, what's going on at that moment. And that really is the case with these dogs here. But just based on this interaction, I would not hesitate to use any of these three dogs in pretty much anything that I do at the shelter. I mean, everything from this behavior or from the body language that I saw here is really good. So let's look at tail and talk about the good. A relaxed tail generally follows the back line of a dog. And even though you can't tell it all that clearly in this picture, if you look at the dog that is on the red piece of equipment, that tail is about at body level. And maybe even the dog that's right here that we can see his back. Obviously his tail comes up a little bit, but you know, that's kind of follows the back line, kind of, is a good way to put it. Now, we talked about earlier when I pointed out Sunday, I believe it was, about the tail being tucked even after she came out to this yard. You can absolutely trust that as fear or submission. And even with Sunday, yeah, she was sniffing all around the yard. I mean, she was really, really into the scents. But even though that her tail was like a J, I mean, it was like a fish hook tucked under her. So if the tail is high, it's alert, excited. Generally, the meaning of that in and of itself doesn't mean good or bad. That's just that dog is alerted and aroused about something at that moment. So wagging of a tail has significantly different meanings. If it is stiff, narrow, tight, That's not necessarily a good sign. It doesn't mean that it's something that we should interrupt, but well, it's one of those that, oh, red flag, let's keep an eye on that. That tail is really high. But, I think that's one of those things. Yep, it's high, it's alerted, it's excited, and this could go one way or the other, and I am very much about letting the dogs make the decision. But we're going to see some high tails, I believe. I'm sorry, we're talking about wags. Stiff, narrow, tight is not good. Sloppy wag, a wiggly butt is good. We're going to be looking at some sloppy wags and wiggly butt videos. If you see a helicopter wag, and that's where that wag really is doing a circle, really just doing round and round, that is the best. The helicopter wags are the best. Now, as we know, there are a lot of dogs who are tough to, or they have dock tails, or it's hard to read it. We're going to look at one video on that, but first we're going to watch our favorite trio of dogs again. And since you've watched this video now, I think 3 times we've watched it, just watch their tails. We'll watch this twice, but just kind of watch how their tails move and they're wagging. Even though, one is up, I mean, all of this is good. It's really fun to watch too. And there, the wags keep going. And do it one more time. That's a good neutral wag right there from the fawn, from the pitty. Jillian, so is a stiff tail up versus straight have the same meaning? Well, when you say versus straight, no, a stiff tail up, usually I would put that in a high tail, alert, excited. And if it's straight, kind of a straight probably is relaxed, but I would say generally relaxed, but I mean, tails are one of those that they're different on every dog. So it would be one, I would pay attention to the hips as well. So speaking of that, you're going to see that actually example in this video. And hopefully my computer is, actually, we are going to see it, but I think I have to share the screen. I hadn't thought about that. So tell you what, rather than going to that right now, we're going to come back to another video towards the end because I'm going to have to switch screens and we don't want me doing technology. All right, so let's see, we saw those guys. So let's talk about eyes. Soft eyes, they're good. If you get a hard stare or a glare from a dog, be careful. That's somewhere between red flag, red alarm. Usually it's red alarm for me, because generally a hard stare usually accompanies a body that's not moving a whole lot, and a dog that doesn't move isn't sending many signals, and I can't read those. So a hard stare usually is something that I will immediately back away from or be extremely careful about. Some dogs can view that as a challenge. So sometimes when you do that, you may find a dog, or you may come across a dog who, if you stare at them, they're going to stare back at you, and you can kind of see them moving forward and trying to get bigger. They view it as a threat. And others will kind of avert the gaze. They'll turn away. But a hard stare is something to be weary of. So a whale eye and averted gaze is fear. or uncertainty. Averted gaze, obviously being of, no, I'm really not going to look you in the eye. I'm just going to look around you. Not really looking you in the eye. But a whale eye is different in that if you think about the white around your pupil, it's where a dog is holding their head, not moving their head, and they're just cutting their eyes up to look at you. That's a whale eye. Usually whale eye is fear. The dog wants to keep an eye on you, but I'm not going to show you any signals like I want to go out for a walk. We saw that a little bit earlier in one slide, but we're going to see a little bit of that here in a minute. So these dogs were the first dogs that came to us after we had started playgroup and kind of had the confidence that we knew what we were doing with dogs coming into new situations. These two guys, when they were on the left, are about 4.5 months old. They were what we described as semi-feral dogs that were captured in the Everglades. Probably abandoned young, but anyway, they were about 4 months old when they came to us. The picture on the left was the very first time that we had them out. I let the leashes on them because I did not want to have to chase them down to get leashes back on them. But they basically hid behind this figure that used to be in one of the old play yards. And we went out there with food and started giving him really yummy, tasty food. And about 2 or 3 weeks later, you can see the difference in the middle picture. They are looking forward, coming forward for the treats. And then on the right is about a year later, they were adopted by someone who works at a doggy daycare. They go to doggy daycare every day, doing fabulous. So that's the progression of these 3 dogs. If I look at those eyes, I can't tell a difference. Now, you may be able to. There are some subtle things. If I was taking a test, I could absolutely point out a few things. But if I'm going to leash this dog, the eyes in and of itself don't tell me a whole lot here. It's really a lot more about the entire body. I mean, and for saying nothing other than the picture on the left, if you look at how it looks like the dog is leaning back a little bit, and the picture on the right looks forward. But again, that's not eyes, that's overall body. And even though we are talking about individual body parts and the signals, you can't look at that and ignore the entire body. So I am going to show pictures of whale eye and some video, but since I've got to switch screen sharing, I'd rather do all that all at one time. So we're going to watch, excuse me, some of the external videos there towards the end, and there are some whale eye pictures in that. Oh, there we go. Well, at least here's one right here. So I'm not going to watch the video right now, but this is whale eye. This is a dog that I am not going to look all the way at you. I'm just going to cut my eyes over at you. Generally, you can take this as a sign of fear. I usually will take it as, I mean, pretty good sign of fear, but a lot of times with dogs, you'll see this and they'll almost immediately recover from it. So it's like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? Oh, is that a leash? Oh, great, we're going for a walk. Oh, I love you. This is my favorite day ever. So sometimes it can change immediately, but again, we never know. But that whale eye, at least in the moment, is a dog that's like, I'm not comfortable with this. So we are going to come back to this YouTube video here in a little bit. So let's talk about the mouth. If they're smiling, it's good. It can be submissive, but we're going to look at a dog here in a minute who's got a great smile on her face. If it is a closed mouth, a tight mouth, That to me is be careful. Actually, if we think about the Doberman in that very first picture, that to me, a closed mouth is, or lip and nose lick, um, is somewhere between red flag and red alarm. So I do pay quite a bit of attention to the mouth. And in this picture, the dog on the left is about as relaxed in every aspect possible. Now, the funny thing is that dog really didn't like to be out in the yard with other dogs. And what she learned was she could get under that hay bale thing we made right there, and they all left her alone. So it was, but the point with her is that her mouth is open. It just very relaxed at the back end, or the very back corner of her mouth. It kind of drops down a little bit. The ears are relaxed. The eyes are soft. But that's a good mouth right there. The dogs in the middle, we saw on the previous slide, or a couple of slides ago, they're looking for a treat. They are sitting there just looking. So we could break that video up and wonder a few things, but based on those ears and the eyes and that, I would say, yeah, that dog is alerted to something that probably is of value to it. So the dog on the right, though, that's a tense mouth. That it's closed, the ears are down, the dog's looking. It's almost like the head's drooped down just a little bit. All of those things are indicators of, I'll say, uncertainty. I don't want to necessarily say fear, because I don't know if fear would be the right word there, but it's clearly one looking at that I would say that dog is not sure of what's going to be happening next. And that's not uncommon for dogs that are with us at the Humane Society. So here's Paisley again. So this is a little bit of conflict. This is actually the next morning, the next day. So you can see Paisley has stayed right there as I approached, stood up, a little bit of fidgeting. There's a little backing up, but now coming forward, but crouched down. Oh, look, Paisley, I have hot dogs. So all of those things are signs of fear. Now I have opened the gate completely, and I'm letting Paisley walk out on her own. Since we had good progress yesterday, I am picking right up where it was and touching her right off the bat. Things that I would not do. Right there, she moved out. I went ahead and leashed the leash to the harness, and boom, we're off. That was about 3 minutes quicker than it was the day before. And that can be sometimes when they have that second experience, it's like, oh, I know what we're doing now. There's a tucked tail. This was what we used to walk through when we would take dogs out. And here we are. We get Paisley into a yard with other dogs, and look at how relaxed she is. This is the reason why we do as many dog, well, this is why we do dog assessments, but also with fearful dogs, we will absolutely use helper dogs, because they can do so much more than we can. So I'm going to show you another one about giving a pet a choice. And I'm going to go ahead and go through the whole video here since we have time. And oh, I'll come back to that. Doggone. All right. We'll come back to that. So we're going to wrap things up with the slides. We're going to go to videos here in a minute when I go to the other screens. But I want you to think about this. Now, generally these slides, well, I mean, these slides I have put in there for our staff that have gone through this, because they're dealing with, well, they're also dealing with staff only dogs. It's as important to me that they don't get bit as it is that you guys don't get bit. So I'll let you read this. So I copied those words or copied that text right out of our intake notes. So guess what the guy on the couch did? He slowly put his hand forward for her to smell. And so let's think about what that dog was doing. The dog out of nowhere started to growl at the roommate. Her hackles were up and it was a deep growl and barking. So a dog that's doing that, well, those kinds of signals aren't, oh, will you pet me? It's more of, I'm not sure who you are, maybe, or maybe you did something before, who knows? But guess what happened? The dog lunged forward and grabbed onto his arm. Now, fortunately, didn't break skin, anything like that, turned out to be fine. But this is just, I mean, this really is another one of those that doesn't bite out of the blue. There's usually 12 warning signs, and we don't always ignore them. I've had my own instances of having things happen and not thinking at that moment and doing something that caused the dog to bite me. So best thing I can say is always take a deep breath, relax your shoulders, and take another deep breath. But because when something does go crazy or happen with a dog, it is tenseful. It is stressful right there. So I wanted to go ahead and get through that. And now we're going to go back to a couple of external videos. There's actually 3. And I will do this switch screen once I get, okay. So we are going to, thank you for asking that, Magana. Thank you for asking that. What should have been done instead? So if you're sitting on the couch, I mean, think about it. The owner, the one who adopted the dog, and honestly, I think the dog had only been with them for a few days, less than a month. The roommate sitting on the couch, the adopter got up and walked into the kitchen, and the dog started looking and growling and deep growling. So if the dog didn't, well, probably actually the best thing I would do, what I would do in that case would be to call the roommate and say, your dog's growling at me, and have the roommate come in and call the dog away. If the dog starts moving forward towards the roommate as if to bite, then obviously that's a major problem. I mean, that is a high risk right there. If the dog just continues to growl and looks, or growl and bark like was described there, I would one, not look at the dog, and I would keep my hands in my lap and probably not move. And again, call the roommate. So the risk in my mind, if the roommate had tried to get up to move away, is by creating that distance from the dog. Since the dog is barking, if he had tried to move away, I don't know what the dog would have done. So that would be the reason why I would not recommend him trying to get up and move away. So it's a great question. And, you know, again, fortunately, he didn't get bit, And I guess the biggest takeaway from that whole story is if a dog's growling at you, don't put any part of your body near their mouth. That's one of the ways I always like to think about it, because that's where the teeth are. So, but it's so hard for us as humans because we see the dogs, we know that if we can make that switch with them, if we can get them to realize that we are the thing that will give them exactly what they want, then you're going to be a really happy dog. But it can be a challenge. All right, so I'm going to stop that share, and let's see. Now I'm going to start another screen share, and we are going to go to here we go. Okay, so this is the YouTube channel of Dr. Patricia McConnell, and she is the one who probably I have learned more things from, but this is tail wags here. So what we're going to see are two dogs that are getting treats. The dog on the left sitting there, kind of sweeping the floor. The dog on the right, the border collie, watch the border collie on the right for right now, because you're going to see the tail's kind of down, but it's loose. I mean, that's kind of a loose wag. You know, obviously they are looking at Dr. McConnell. And now there's a little bit of now we've stopped. Oh, the dog's stretching. Mom, why is it taking you so long to give me treats? And now there's a little bit of just wagging to the right, but still loose. You know, really easy. Oh, now we've got a niche. Let's do this. And I think here, well, I'm watching the tail, and now the tail stopped. Mom, are you going to ever, okay, you're going to give it to us, maybe? So it never really goes into a helicopter wag, but, you know, it's pretty sloppy wag that's on the border collie there. So if we look at the main thing on the Lhasa Apso, I think that is, I don't know my small breeds as well as my big ones, but the main thing on the Lhasa Apso, if we watch her tail wagging, watch those hips. And that's where, if it's a dog that has a docked tail, or a tail maybe that's really curly or something, you can actually really pay attention to the hips and get a pretty good read. Because again, we're not going to look, even though we're looking at the individual body parts, it's still the entire dog that matters in those moments, in that moment. Now we don't want that. So the other thing that I think, since I've got this here, we're just going to go to Dr. McConnell's YouTube channel, because the other video that I want to show is the whale eye. Here we go. So we're back with Misty again, and we're going to see tongue flicks and whale eye. And lip curls. All right, so we're going to watch that again, and I'll talk through it this time. But so there's the whale eye. That's about as definitive of whale eyes could be. So thank you, Vicky. You're absolutely correct. As soon as I said Lhasa Apso, it's like, that's not right. But yes, that's a Cavalier King Charles. So as you saw this video, we obviously, there was a dog nearby, which was what prompted all of this. So there was that little lip lick to begin with. And I know from having seen this video a whole lot that as we're looking at the dog on the right, or well, on that dog's left, our right, the other one is approaching. And you can see the kind of a little bit of averted gaze. There's a whale eye watching it go by, coming and now ready for it to come around. There it is. It walked on forward. Oh, why is it looking at me? And now I believe they may have, oh no, actually this is just backing up a little bit and we're gonna see this very, there's that tongue flick. And I'm gonna turn my head over this way. I'm not looking at you. I'm not looking at you. I'm not looking at that dog over there that I'm looking at. So there's a very classic whale eye. There's also actually in this that's coming up here. If I get that ribbon out of the way. All right. I hope, there we go, Gigi. So this is, again, these are all from in our old intake building. This is a little dog that came in, Gigi, and Gigi, as you can see, her info. So cherry eye, you can see that growth that's going on right there. A lot of dogs get it. Actually, I haven't seen dogs in a while, interestingly enough, with it, but it is something that can be medically fixed. But generally, if a dog gets it, a lot of times they'll get it again. But Gigi had it. That was irrelevant. So here is my first interaction with Gigi. So pretty quick, and I don't know if you noticed it, but there was a definite lip curl when I put my fingers close to her there. And then she turned her head away to avoid me. Now she moved forward a little bit right there as if to sniff. And that's when I decided, oh, I'm going to move my hand closer. Not what she had in mind. So obviously my way to a dog's heart, peanut butter. So she was more than happy to eat that, but there still wasn't anything about moving forward. So of course I continue to come back. Hi, Gigi. Guess who's here? So that distance, moving up, moving back to the corner, was the big key for me. She's like, it's like, all right, she's doing things that I want to see her do, but she's not ready to go beyond this. And absolutely, Julie, she would be perfect for drive-by treats. You have no idea how excited I am that you just asked that. So here's what I did over the next 20 minutes. Review, revise, repeat. So it took a little bit of time, but eventually she moved forward. The body got relaxed and I felt comfortable to pick her up, take her out to the yard. Now this is the next day, but and literally it was the next day. It did just, the ball started rolling and she did great. Yeah, where we are right there now is actually part of the retention pond. Yeah, I mean, once she realized that, hey, this place is pretty good, I don't really have anything to worry about. I mean, she did great. Then of course we started putting her with other dogs, and it was all I could do to keep from adopting her too. So another great story. Yep, we just kept her. She got fixed. She just, I mean, she became a typical dog. Hit the floor within the first hour. She was adopted. So if we take the time, give them a chance, we really, really can get some amazing results out of these dogs. But it's so much of it is giving them the chance. I'm giving them choice. So that wraps everything up. It worked out pretty well with having the iPad right here to catch the questions as they came through. If anybody else has any more questions, feel free to go ahead and send them now. But otherwise, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. It is coming up right on an hour and a half. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it was valuable. I'm pleased with how it turned out, at least from my end. We have been recording this, and I am going to post this out on YouTube for all of those who were not able to watch it tonight. And I am, so thank you all very much.